All right. Hello, beautiful people. How are we doing this afternoon? Welcome, welcome. We are so excited to be welcoming you all. We will be doing introductions in a moment. We just want to start the session off with letting you all know that this session will be recorded and provided to those that are not able to attend today. So please let your colleagues know that they can go ahead and access this on the NCORE website afterward. We will be welcoming questions in the chat for everyone. If there are things that pop up and you're like, ooh, that's something I want to ask, we will try to navigate the chat as best as possible. So if we missed your question, please feel free to go ahead and put it back in the chat so that we can monitor. We may take pause during the presentation to answer, or we might wait till the end, depending on what that question is. Chat is open. Please let us know where you're coming from, what school you're with, your pronouns. If you know one of us, say what's up, hello at your girl, all of the things. Please make sure that today you are engaged in this experience the way that feels good for you. If that means having your camera off, that means having your camera off. If you need to eat, depending on what time zone you're in, we recognize that all of those things need to happen. So please take part in this session the way that feels the best for you. Also, please remain muted the entire time so that everyone has an opportunity to hear us as facilitators while we are discussing all of these wonderful tips and information that we're about to share with you all. I believe that's it. So our next slide, Raul. So who are these people that are talking to you today? I'm going to stop talking and let my co-facilitators introduce themselves so that we can introduce ourselves in order from left to right.
Yeah, good morning, or no, good afternoon. Sorry, buenas tardes, everybody. Good to see you all. I'm Raul Hinojosa Jr. I use he, him pronouns. I work at the University of Texas at Dallas in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I serve as the Latinx caucus co-chair. So I'm excited to be with you today and share from my experiences with NCORE, as a previous presenter, and also as a session reviewer. So excited about our conversation.
Good evening, everyone. I am calling in from Chicago, Illinois. My name is Eva. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as one of the co-chairs for the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus for NCORE. I also served as a workshop facilitator, a pre-conference session facilitator, and a session reviewer.
Buenas, buenas, mi gente. My name is Isatis Piñero. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella. I have the pleasure of currently serving for another 24 hours as the Director for Education and Social Change at the University of Colorado Boulder. I am transitioning to the University of North Carolina, Charlotte next week to serve as the Director of the Office of Identity, Equity, and Engagement. And I currently serve as the co-chair for the Latinx caucus within NCORE. I have been to NCORE several years, I'll say. I don't remember exactly. I think this will be my 7th, if I'm not mistaken. And so very excited to be chatting with you all today and going through our new process for submitting proposals.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for the introductions. And we see all of you sharing your introductions in the chat, and it's exciting to see folks from all over joining us today. Before we kind of jump into the content, we want to obviously start with learning objectives. What do we plan to cover? Kind of what is the purpose of today? And one of the reasons that we are really, we're really interested in partnering together and leading the session is because we'd like to increase the AAPI and Latinx content for conference proposal submissions. The information we're sharing today is for anybody, right? But part of our, as caucuses, we are definitely interested in making sure the voices of our communities continue to be represented in the conference proceedings. We also want to encourage folks from AAPI and Latinx identities, higher ed professionals, to consider going to NCORE, so we can, try our best to answer questions about that part as well, and then get to make sure that we continue to work on increasing the number of AAPI and Latinx identifying presenters. So we hope in this space that you'll be able to connect with these learning objectives, and that by the end of today's session, we'll have answered these and many other questions that you may have about the process. And so we're going to jump right in. We have a lot to share with you, and Eva's going to take it from here.
Awesome. I'm so excited for this large number of attendees. Hopefully, some of you folks attended the webinar that focused on NCORE's theme about a couple of minutes ago. I think the framing of that webinar ties really nicely into some of the offerings that we have to share tips and tricks on how to submit a successful proposal. With the great number of you here, I hope that also means that we are going to garner a lot of interest, a lot of passion that will speak to the volume of proposals that we will see in a couple of weeks submitted, because the deadline is fast approaching in a couple of weeks. So on to the next slide. So as a conference proposal reviewers and also information that has provided by NCORE, this is what we want to share with you. This is the evaluation rubric that is used to tally or to assess the different proposals that have been submitted into the portal. So NCORE solicits different individuals to serve as proposal reviewers, and this is what we are provided. We are looking at outlines and descriptions, so reviewing whether the session outline is coherent, it is appropriate for NCORE's mission, values, and the theme, the topic that they are proposing, and also aligns with the session description. The next thing that we look at are the learning outcomes. So whether or not the session learning outcomes are reflected in the description and fit the session topic. Third is that we want to make sure that either the presenter or numerous presenters on the proposal are in alignment with the session topic. Do you have experience, expertise? Have you facilitated this in the past? Essentially, why are you the one that are presenting on this particular topic? Based off of the three that are outlined in the rubric, each component will be scored based off of what is provided below. So the overall score, you'll be rated on not recommended, or it's not relevant to NCORE or the theme. It needs revision, so recommended with major revisions. And as session reviewers, we'll also provide feedback into what those revisions or what is missing as well. We might also rate it as satisfactory, recommend with minor revisions, commendable, which is recommended, and an excellent proposal, which we highly recommend for NCORE to consider as part of the 2024 experience. So this is a very general overview on what is the rubric and criteria that is being used as session reviewers that we then provide recommendations to NCORE on which proposals to ultimately accept. Next, I want to go over what strong workshop proposals include. And so there's a lot of information provided. So if you're not one to take copious notes at this time, this session is recorded, so you can access at a later time. So one, strong workshop proposals include strong objectives. These objectives should be measurable, achievable, is evident throughout the proposal, and supported by interactive learning activities. Two, expertise. So whether or not you are the presenter of the workshop or you're inviting multiple voices to be considered to provide multiple lenses, maybe highlight collaborative efforts that happen in your institution or organization, the facilitator must have the experience and expertise in the focus area of the workshop. Number three is the methodology. The workshop proposal should start from participants' needs and use a learning-focused approach to facilitate individual and group-based skills development. So thinking about the different activities, conversations, critical conversations that participants will be engaging in order to obtain closer to the outcomes. Number four is the relevance. There's many ways to think about relevance. So either relevance to the theme of NCORE, the relevance to the theme, the mission, Also the pledge to Keiki, which was talked about in the previous webinar, or also tracks and areas of focus that NCORE recommends. So the proposal must fit with different categories, whether that be intersectionality, human resources, DEI, student affairs, faculty tracks, and various levels, and also assists in developing the relevant skills that are adaptable and transferable to different contexts. So as a reminder, NCORE invites many different individuals to the conference experience. You may have individuals that work directly in higher education, different functional areas, nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations. So making sure that the content at hand, the expertise, is transferable to those different contexts. And the last one is expected outcomes. So by participating, delegates will learn something new, be guided by the facilitator to make those connections to their professional practice, and also develop an action plan. We want all of our participants to come out with the tools to apply to their institutions or their organizations at hand. Next slide. How to write a strong proposal. So one, how to write a strong proposal. All these things are important to consider because not only do you want session reviewers to provide a highly strong recommendation to the NCORE organization, but it's also the information that you are going to use to draw participants to attend your sessions. Either as a facilitator or a conference attendee, it is the proposal or the abstract and the title that really draws me and invites me into what is intriguing to what I want to further develop my learning in. So one, the workshop title is important. You will need to provide a clear, understanding picture of the workshop. Try to make it interesting, engaging, and descriptive as possible. And I believe in the portal, you could have it up to 100 words or less. Number two is the meat of it, so the workshop proposal. The strongest workshop proposals will communicate a clear sense of the workshop. The content should be current. So what are some of the current events that are happening within the landscape of local, national, global? It is supported by research and consistent with best practices. The best workshop proposals will also follow a format that I will provide at a later slide. The next one is, again, facilitator experience. So who are ones that you could invite within your organization, outside of your organization, to really speak to the content at hand. Consider including concrete information of the subject matter. So maybe your research interest or focus and or years of experience facilitating this topic. Here is how you should structure your workshop proposal. So one, you'd begin with including learning objectives. So you could begin by stating a need or a problem that should be addressed in the workshop. Specify what skills you expect participants to learn or be able to apply in measurable, realistic, and time-bound terms. Learning objectives allow participants to assess what they will gain from attending the workshop and whether or not they want to attend it. Workshops with clear objectives will have a better chance of being selected. Next is a program overview or a short abstract. So provide a brief overview of your workshop session in a very similar format to an article abstract. Here you'd specify the workshop topic, provide an overview with the goals, and highlight the forms of different activities that the participants know that they will take part in. Next is the format. And so this is where you really think about the details and the flow of your workshop. Provide an outline of the methodology to be used in each of the section, all the way from the beginning introduction to the end conclusion and takeaways. For example, identify why you would use one interactive technique, such as small group work, rather than case studies, demonstrations, problem-based learning. Also, be sure to include timeframes for each activity and provide an outline of the time allocated for each of the section. A good workshop will keep its participants interested and will utilize various interactive methods to keep everyone engaged throughout the session. And the last one are the materials. Specify the types of handouts and or materials that will be provided to attendees during the workshop. So whether you will have physical handouts or digital handouts through a QR code, or anticipate being able to share further contact information of how participants can learn more about your session topic. So I just learned what this term means, TLDR, too long, didn't read. And so that was a lot of information that we provided. And so we summed up some of the important points that we want you folks to take away. So reflect on who is the audience for your proposed session. These may be big. We recognize that folks are on different journeys of their learning spectrum. And so is your session for beginner folks, those who are entering the conversation and learning more about this topic, all the way to advanced? Are you engaging students, undergraduate, graduate, doctoral students? Are you engaging faculty, student affairs professionals? Is it directly for higher ed or other different organizations that will be present? So really think about who this audience is intended for. I mentioned this many times. Consider collaborating with others inside and outside of your organization. We really believe that it will not only make the content a lot richer, but it'll also be inviting for many folks to be able to find a place in the conversation as well. Your perspective and expertise are part of an important voice that is needed at the conference. And so whether this is your first time or you are a seasoned professional at conferences, we really want to provide an accessible space and let you folks know that if there's something that you want to have a conversation on, that your expertise is ultimately valued at the conference. Integrate where possible diverse voices and perspectives. This connects back to our webinar and really honing in on the theme that intersectionality is important, collective voices, the importance of the collective struggle, the integration of Native Hawaiian Indigenous voices, its relationship to land. And so we really want to think about or invite you to think about what voices are missing and which ones can you invite into the conversation. And the last one is plan ahead when preparing your session proposed materials and allow for technical issues with the new system. Raul is going to go into what's new in the portal for the submission. So if you have presented before, my notes are very detailed for a reason, because it will definitely prepare you for the new details that will be asked of you when you are submitting a proposal.
All right, thanks, Eva. Yeah, so your information has through lines in terms of how we connect all of this to the submission portal. And so this is a new process for those of you who have submitted proposals before. So we want to make sure and walk you through a little bit about what you can expect in that part of, submitting your proposal, some of the logistics things. So if you go to the NCORE website under the Call for Proposals page, there'll be a place where you can enter the submission portal. You'll see a link for that. And one of the first things you'll need to do is create a Catalyst account. So you'll see a sort of login screen, and you'll want to click on create a new account to create one. It's a pretty simple process. They'll ask you for some basic information. You'll need to set up a password. And I found this to be really easy to create my account and to get started. Once you log in, you'll see kind of a dashboard that looks like this. And I want to point out just a few things on the dashboard that are important. There's a link at the top or a place to click for the dashboard, which is kind of the main screen. There you'll be able to see proposals that you've submitted, go back and make changes to them and so forth. So that's important to be able to get back to sort of that main page. At the very bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that there are some options there. You can save your proposal. So if you want to start and create a draft and save it and come back and edit it or work on it, you can totally do that by clicking on the save button. Once you're done, you can submit it. You also have the option to withdraw your proposal in case you need to maybe change something and resubmit it after you've done that. You have the option to do that. I tested it. I created a dummy sort of presentation and I was able to withdraw it without a problem. And then you can also print it in a really sort of accessible format or use that to create a PDF if you're interested in doing that as well. For each submission or each session that you submit, there's kind of 3 tabs at the top that are going to be the navigation for the portal. So if you click on the left side, submission information will give you a lot of information about deadlines, things to remember, just key messages about how NCORE works when it comes to presentations and presenters. The second tab, that's session information. We're going to walk through what goes here, but this is the sort of bulk of your presentation information. And then the presenter's information will be about you and any co-presenters that you are submitting for your session. And then finally, there's basic navigation, next and back and so forth. That's pretty intuitive and easy to get to. So let's talk about what's under the session information tab. And again, this connects very closely with what Eva talked about, but we want to make sure and give you a sense of what's required. Some folks may use this as a guide if you want to start working maybe in a Word doc or offline. You can be thinking about that as well, but you'll need to indicate the format. Is it experiential? Is it an interactive training? Is it instructional or clinical demonstration? Is it a lecture, presentation, or is it a panel? So you'll choose one of those options. You'll need to indicate your session title. You'll and make sure, like Eva said, that it is something catchy that will grab people's attention. You'll need to indicate a session track. And here are a couple of examples. Isatis is going to put in the chat the entire list of tracks, but this is important because you can only select one track and you want to pick a track that aligns with what you're proposing. So if you have, for example, there's accessibility in the academy, faculty interests, human resources, student affairs, and affiliated professionals. Those are just the example ones that I put here on the slide. If you're doing a presentation about something related to students, and you put it in the human resources track, then it will go to the wrong set of reviewers. And this is how sessions are assigned to reviewers, and it's also how they show up in the conference program and app. So it's important that you think about choosing the track that best aligns with what you're proposing. In addition, you'll want to indicate the session complexity. Is it for beginners, intermediate folks, experts, or for everyone? And then the time that you're proposing, 75 minutes, 90 minutes, or I don't think that's right. So it's to be 3 hours, not 30 hours. Although if you submit a 30-hour presentation, that's pretty awesome. So, but you'll need to choose from those durations as a proposal. Sometimes what happens is, depending on space or other allocations, you may hear back from NCORE and say, well, we need to adjust this or whatever. So you'll hear more if there's questions about that. You'll hear back from the NCORE team. In terms of other information, you'll need to indicate your room setup. There's a sort of default setup, and that's noted in the system. But if you need some other special setup, you'll need to indicate that, especially if you're doing interactive roundtable discussions or things like that. You'll want to be able to indicate that to the NCORE team as they plan out room assignments if your session is accepted. Another really important thing, and Eva spoke at length about this, is your learning outcomes. So you need to specifically indicate what are the learning outcomes for your session. You need to have at least 2 learning outcomes in your proposal. You can have up to 5, and I think there's spots for 3 that show up automatically in the proposal submission portal. So you want to make sure that you spend some time really thinking about those and that they accurately describe what you're going to be talking about. You want to include the descriptions, the brief and the detailed versions. The brief version is used in the app, and the detailed version will go in the printed program, but you want to make sure these are all compelling and explain thoroughly kind of what you're going to be talking about and what people can expect when they come to your session. Obviously, it's important to give, if there are references that you make in any part of your proposal, you want to include the bibliography of references that you have used, and then also the timed agenda. So how many minutes will you spend on certain topics, or what do you anticipate as kind of the agenda for your session? How will you flow through things? If there's activities, how many minutes will you dedicate to different activities? This is helpful for us to see that there's a solid plan of what you have thought about in terms of your proposal and what you're planning to do during the time you have your session. In the presenter tab, you'll need to include information about yourself as the presenter. You'll need to include your biography, and reviewers will be looking at this part to ensure that you have subject matter expertise, or that you're somehow have credentials or experience to talk about this. I also know that I saw in the chat that there's multiple students or student groups that are listening today. When we say your subject matter expertise, that could be your lived experience, that could be research you're working on, that could be labs you worked in. We're not talking necessarily about full-time positions in higher education, but we're talking about expertise that you may have through your lived experience or your academic research or studies. So make sure that you frame it that way if you're a student and that's what aligns with what you're proposing. In addition, you'll want to include your affiliation. So if it's a university, college, or organization, there's kind of a sort of database of those that are already set up. So your institution may show up. If it doesn't show up, you have the option to add it in there. So I think I was the first person from UT Dallas to do it. So I was able to add in my institution pretty easily because it wasn't listed there already. And then you'll need to include any accessibility requests that you have. This information is really helpful for NCORE, the NCORE team to know and to make arrangements for presenters, and to make sure that the spaces are accessible as you come, if your session is accepted. And so that's pretty much it. Those are I think the main things that are part of the portal. It's pretty easy. You can use this, we'll share out the information that we're providing today, but you can use this as a guide to help you start to think about the sections of your proposal. In addition, like I said, once you create your Catalyst account and create a submission, you can also work within the system and add things from there. A couple of really sort of important things to remind you about is the deadline to submit proposals is December 18th. So you'll want to make sure and plan ahead to be able to submit it on time. And then you can see kind of the milestones for notifications and scheduling, confirmations, all of those kinds of things as well. And then of course, other things, if you've never presented for NCORE before, you must register for the conference, even as a presenter, and you can register after you've been notified about a session. So that is well before the early bird deadline. So you have time to sort of make sure, and if you get a session accepted, to be able to register before the early bird deadline. There's not a limit to the number of proposals you can submit, and you will be given, if accepted, template and some accessibility guidelines not guidelines, they're expectations, I should say, for presenters, to make sure that our spaces are inclusive and to make sure that we're creating, for example, PowerPoint presentations that are accessible. And so you'll get guidelines that you must follow for your presentations. And then you must bring a computer. There'll be adapters, there'll be sound, there'll be data projectors, all of those kinds of things will be available, but you'll need to bring your own laptop or device to connect with the HDMI connection to be able to show your presentation if it's selected. We'd like to spend a little bit of time on questions, and we'll kind of come to a close a few minutes before our final time, because we have a couple of just last minute things to share. But I see that there are things in the Q&A and maybe some things in the chat. So yeah. I'm going to invite my sort of co-presenters. If anyone sees questions they want to start tackling, we can go from there, and I'll take a second to look over them too.
Yeah, so I'll be asking the questions out loud, and since both Raul and Eva both have experience serving as session reviewers, we also have NCORE folks on the call that we can tap on to answer some questions too. So I'm just gonna go in. Oh wow, we have a lot more. So I'm gonna try and get through these real quick and just ask them away. Folks from NCORE, if you see us pause or we tap on you, make sure to just unmute and help us out. So the first question is, if revisions need to be made, how much time do we have to fix and resubmit the proposal?
Yeah, so this is a question that we will ask our NCORE colleagues to help us with, because I've never had a session where I've got it sent out or sent back for resubmission. So Justin or someone from NCORE will pop on to help us with that question.
I'm happy to answer that, Raul. Thank you. So the revisions works this way: is if we receive that scoring from a proposal, and we're looking as a selection team at the scored proposals, there'll be some that are recommended to accept. We accept. We'll be looking through for topics that are underrepresented, areas that we feel need more to complete threads, strands, etc. And we get into the recommend with revisions. Those will be sessions that we're looking to select, and so we'll provide a timeline based on what we agree to with the presenters. If anything in the world, I'm anti-bureaucratic, and so I'll work with people as needed to get the time and exchange needed for the information to make sure the presentations that need to happen. And so, but it's difficult to put a tangible amount on that, because we'll hold slots for selection for proposals that we're looking at selecting with revision. So look for if that is something that applies to you in this process. We're looking for a revision with the intention of selection would be the what I'm imagining will be the case more often than not. And then we'll be working with you to on your schedules and our humanity. That's a long answer. I apologize.
Don't apologize. That's awesome. Thanks,
awesome.
Justin.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated. So as a student planning to present, what is NCORE planning to do to ensure that students are encouraged and supported?
Yeah.
That's,
So
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, one thing I will say is that there's an opportunity to apply to be an NCORE scholar, right? Like there are a certain number of students who are selected to be participate in that, and there's some support, travel support, and things like that. And part of the commitment to that is that you'll do a poster presentation. So there's a very specific, that's one very specific student opportunity. You can, I believe more information about that is on the website, on the NCORE website, and encourage students to submit there. But also, I mean, students are welcome to submit sessions, proposals. We encourage you to do that. There are more students than ever that are going to NCORE, and your voices are really important, and you always have great things to share. So we encourage you to submit proposals. We will talk a little bit about proposal development. We have some office hours set up next week if you want to talk through how you might put together a session proposal, things like that. We can talk through that, but and then we'll talk also about getting involved with caucuses. But as caucuses, we often are supporting our students, right? So we want to promote your sessions. We're around if you need support, or sometimes we're just there to cheer you on if you're selected for a session and to do that, right? So part of the experience of being part of a caucus is to have folks, a community in a big conference, have a community that you can connect with at the conference. So I don't know if others have other things to share. Happy to.
Yeah, I just, for those that are on the call that identify students and are interested in getting the student scholar information, I dropped the link to the direct portion of the website in the chat. So it's at this point probably like 3 above. So I just dropped that link in the chat that has all of the information on how to become a student scholar, what the requirements are, the expectations, as well as the link to the application. So I want to make sure that we get to all the other questions. And so if you all read through that, it's pretty detailed and you all should be able to kind of decipher. And then we'll be talking about another time where we will be available for additional questions later on in the presentation. So if today you're like, this is a hell of a lot of information, we get it, you need to process, but there's going to be another opportunity for us to connect and to talk through ideas, questions, planning, and all of that. And we'll talk about that before we get off the call. Are there any other responses to this question before I move on? Okay, seeing none. Next question. Typically, how many proposals are submitted and accepted?
So
This is a first-time attendee.
this would be a Justin question.
Mhm.
I would say 1 million, but I don't think that's true.
A lot, a lot. You got 5 days worth of sessions. It's a hell of a lot of sessions at
Right.
different timings. I will say something that is good about this conference that might differ from others, and something that I share with students that we typically have taken to the conference is that feel free to hop, like session hop. So attend a session, get the information, and go to others. Because there's times where you're like, there are 4 sessions that I'm interested in, and they're all at the same exact time. The good thing about NCORE is that it's all about connections. Like, people's feelings will not be hurt if you leave their session, if you ask for their information either right before they start or just on the app, get their information and reach out and ask for their materials after the conference. NCORE is literally built that way, which is so phenomenal because we know it's, and if you're not attending sessions, it's because you're getting a drink at the bar with a new friend, or you went to go get lunch and lunch took 3 hours instead of 1. So all of these things happen, like lives. So that's the beauty about NCORE. So I will interject and say that, but there are a lot of sessions. So Justin, go ahead.
My takeaway today is lives. I like that very much. We do not put a restriction on number of proposals that you can submit. So technically Raul is correct. I will add one caveat that I do and we do look at number of proposals in the selection process because we are wanting to provide as many different opportunities to presenters as we can, understanding that there's so many different kinds of decision makings that get made. But if you submitted 10, you don't necessarily expect to get selected for 5 because we do need to provide the opportunity to as much of a wide range of complexity as possible.
The second part of the question, Justin, was how many get accepted? Is it?
All right.
Yeah.
So that's still a little bit in a fluid place right now. I have 40 session rooms and 5 days. I anticipate that in the neighborhood of 300 sessions will get selected, but that's a really general estimate and not a fine estimate at the moment, as the invited program that we're working with our partner communities comes together. It all comes down to around January when we get our review scores back. We know how many slots we have. And so last year we had around 700 proposals and would anticipate a similar number of proposals. And so that's, if that gives you a sense of number of proposals, number of selections, it'll be in that vicinity, I suspect.
Okay, awesome, thank you. This is a 2-parter. First part, when will folks be notified of they've been accepted?
Yeah, so I put the deadlines and the timeline on the screen. So around January 29th is when decision notifications will go out. It's a big program to build. And so I know Justin does a lot of Tetris to try to figure this out. So that's why I say around January 29th, but you can anticipate hearing something. And then you can see kind of some of the other deadlines that are coming up.
If ever it isn't January 29th, I'm going to email all proposals to let them know.
Awesome, thank you.
I will let people know.
The next question, or the next part of that question is, if you are accepted, if your proposal, if the proposal you've submitted is accepted, whatever verbiage is good for you, does NCORE have any arrangements in terms of what they pay for, flight registration fee, hotels, etc.?
Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to do that. We do, if you have a need, we can sometimes look for ways to connect you to resources. If that's something that comes up for you as a presenter, I always answer those emails. And sometimes it's a matter of seeing if there's a way we can informally connect people to share rooms. We're not allowed to do that through our institution I mean sleeping rooms, as it makes sense to help defray costs and stuff like that. We're not allowed to do that on an institutional level due to the requirements at our particular institution to facilitate that. But there are things that we do along those lines that allow us to support and then try to connect people to ways to get around that. We do provide volunteer opportunities to offset registration costs. But we don't have the capacity to provide people with flight expenses.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
Did I get the whole question? I'm so sorry.
You did.
Okay.
Yep. I along those lines, are there any grants or scholarships for presenters to attend the conference?
The student scholars is the direct access point for us at the moment.
Okay. And just for clarification purposes, the Student Scholar Program is for undergraduate and graduate students. So it's not a like professional staff member who's considered an NCORE scholar. They are student like status, like attending institution currently as an undergraduate or graduate student. So just want to provide that clarification.
Or part-time.
Yep. And then I do see the questions that are being put in the chat. I'm currently working on the questions that are in the Q&A just for folks on the call so that you know where I'm at. Next question is really quick. And I think I can just answer this just off the bat. The question is around if they're supporting an undocumented student, submitting a session on supporting undocumented students, which session track should be recommended in terms of race, ethnicity, and social justice in higher ed, or student affairs and affiliated professionals. Not sure if you cannot pick two tracks with the new session, with the new proposal. I would say do race, ethnicity, and social justice. That's where I would go. I don't know if my colleagues have a different response, only because of that social justice piece.
I mean, I think the only reason I would say choose student affairs is if your session is very specifically about a student affairs related matter, right? Like about
Sure.
something related to housing, or I don't know, like, to think about if it's very specifically about that. But I would tend to agree, like I would pick the same as what Isathesis suggested.
At risk of opening a door, this is where you're allowed to submit more than one proposal.
Boom.
Oh,
Mic drop.
read between the lines there, people.
Same session, multiple tracks. Ooh, there you go. Loopholes, love them. Next question.
What have we done?
Any examples of sessions that were popular in the past and why they were successful? Good question.
Eva, do you want to share? Is there something you want to share?
I'll just say I think most that are popular based on our planning conversations has been they come back as invited presentations and or pre-conference sessions. So that's how you know sometimes if it's a specific invited session, and those are highlighted in the app and when you're looking at conference sessions. So those are typically the ones that have really positive, high-ranking feedback, in addition to being something that we've all had heard in terms of like the caucus leadership and core staff and so on and so forth. There's a lot of like factors that come into play. Any additional thoughts from y'all that you would like to add to that?
Can you repeat the question? I was answering questions.
Oh, you're good.
In the
It was in terms of popularity. Now I lost the question because I put it and answered already.
Yeah. Are there any popular presentations
Yes.
that people might propose in the
Yeah.
Examples of sessions that were popular in the past and why they were successful.
I think from a session reviewer and someone who attends sessions, the ones that stand out are the ones that are very like action based. So thinking about like tangible tools. So thinking about like crafting the proposal is like, what are the actionable, tangible, quantifiable things that participants can take back to their institutions rather than remaining in the abstract or the theoretical space, which connects to our theme in Hawaii is like, how do we imagine this like futuristic state of where we want our world to be in? Topics that center around supporting diverse students in new and innovative ways. And so even if they are the same type of topics, I think the ones that stand out are those like innovative practices and often ones that think about collaboration even outside like student affairs. And so really incorporating those diverse perspectives. I mean, there's like millions of sessions. And so I don't know if I could like narrow it down based off numbers, but I can say as a reviewer and a participant, like those are the ones that stand out.
Awesome, thank
Yeah, and I'll just add really quick, like I think every year the mix of attendees who come to the session and the perspectives that they bring to the come to the conference and the mix of perspectives they bring to the conference vary. And so I think, you know, based on what are the national conversations, what are conversations that are happening, kind of what's popular changes each time that I've been to an NCORE, right? I think that also should inform a little bit about kind of what you're thinking about submitting a proposal for, right? So something that is, you know, in the national conversation, a statewide or local conversation, something that connects to, you know, issues that we're facing in our field. And I think, importantly, this always, but especially this time, is things that connect to our location this year. And there was you know, if you didn't get a chance to hear the session right before this, I think there's some great opportunities to talk about some really interesting conversations that we haven't had traditionally, and submit proposals around those.
Awesome. The next question in the Q&A is, for lecture style presentations, would the outline be simply topic time based?
Yes.
I would say yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 most popular tracks?
In terms of number of submissions, I presume that's in terms of number of submissions. We have the most submissions by race, the most generalized categories, which is race and ethnicity and sovereignty in higher ed, and then the intersectionality identities are the 2 top. It's them and then the rest.
Next question. Do you need to know who all the presenters would be when you submit the proposal? For example, would we be able to add community partners and students later on?
I'll go ahead and take that one. You're provided an opportunity to substitute and or add presenters leading up to the conference. We'll provide you with the information on the process upon selection, but that is a yes.
Awesome. Are the decisions sent via email or through the proposal portal?
I would expect you're going to receive that notification through the portal. This is the first year of our using it. And so if we're not satisfied that people are receiving that information, we're going to double it up by sending it via email as well.
Awesome.
So we'll make sure people know, since this is the first year we're doing it.
Is NCORE seeking vendors or professional skills or services both on the mainland and in Hawaii to help facilitate the conference? The answer is yes. That was covered in the session before this. So you can see the recording will be available on the NCORE website. They are in process working with local vendors, folks, organizations, all of the things to be part of NCORE.
Email us at ncore@ou.edu if you have a suggested vendor, art organization, etc. Of any form on the islands to share with us, and we'll look into them.
If you present a workshop proposal, but the reviewers feel your submission would be more appropriate as a poster, will that recommendation be offered by the reviewers?
That's another great question. All sessions that aren't selected have an opportunity to have their session considered as a poster. From experience, that's an excellent way to get your information in front of the NCORE community. This last year was the first year that we offered poster presentations using digital presentation methods, which allows you to do short slide presentations standing in front of or as you're able to interact in front of a monitor, and given those presentation times to present the poster.
Awesome, thank you. I have 2 more questions, and then we're gonna finish out with some additional stuff that we have set up for you all in the next couple weeks. And these are real quick. So is there a session track info or descriptions on each track category so that we can make sure that we're selecting the correct one?
So, I mean, this is probably more of a kind of an art than a science, right? So I would look through and see what aligns. In a second, we're going to talk about office hours we're having next week. You can, maybe that's a good time to chat through your topic presentation and see. We also are going to share ways you can get in touch with us after today. So maybe that's something we could talk about through email or through our group meet, things like that as well.
Yep. And then last question. Oops, sorry, go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say that I'm not sure what the answer to that is honestly on the NCORE website, but I thank you for that answer, Raul, because I think it's a good one.
Thanks.
And then last question, and then we'll talk about our office hours that we have set up for y'all. Are there any topics that have not been covered that you all would like to see?
Eva, do you have any thoughts here? I can say something while you're thinking. So for us, the whole point of having this session is to try to make sure that we increase the number of Latinx and AAPI presenters. So think about the things that you deal with, the things that you work with in your professional or with your students or as faculty members in the academy. Like for us, that's what we want to see in proposals, because it adds to the voices, the perspectives, the ways that our colleagues can learn about us as well, right? Like, so for me, that would be what we would love to see more of.
And I'll say that these 2, identity, affinity, space, are probably the 2 that are least represented within presentations. And that's why we thought it was really important to hold this session to uplift that. With our experience at NCORE, like these are the 2 identities that are often the least presented in terms of content at the conference. And so that's why we were like, we got to speak up and say something. So that's why we're here today. But again, it's not just those 2 things. It's also to share, this is the new process and this is also available for everyone. So it's a both and here.
Yeah, the reason why we started doing these webinars and workshops on like the transparency and then step-by-step and the tools and how to submit a successful one is to increase those representation numbers within the NCORE conference and community, right? So that's one thing. But back to what I had mentioned earlier in one of the slides is that we really want folks to like hone in on like what is their perspective and expertise and are things that you're already doing really well and successfully at your institution within your own practice or research that you really want to bring light to the NCORE community. So I don't think that there is like any one topic that we are looking to really, really, really highlight as part of the next conference experience, but we really want individuals to like trust in their own power and truth, and that you have something great to contribute to the conference. And so what is your area of expertise and perspective and insight that you want to add to enhance everyone's experience?
Can I just say
So-
real quick?
Go ahead, yeah.
I saw in a couple of the comments that, people are excited and nervous to submit their proposal. And I just want to say sending love. I know this is a big deal. And your proposal will be carefully reviewed. And the decision day for the NCORE staff is an exciting day and a heartbreaking day. Because you're going to make some people really happy and some people are going to be disappointed. But just know that your work is admirable, the work you do in this community. And we're grateful for it. And we'll look for ways to include it in the NCORE community, even if it's not a regular presentation. And then we will ask people to submit their sessions as posters. And so just keep that in mind and submit. Pua Case on the earlier presentation, one of the things that she says that I always love is that it's okay to crawl to courage. You have to crawl your way to courage so that you can act. It's okay if we feel a certain way when we're doing something. I feel a certain way when I talk in front of people. So just sending love.
So just a couple things. I've dropped some things in the chat, and I'm also going to let you all know, like, these are ways that you all can get involved with us. These are just our 2 caucuses. There are many others that you can join. That information is going to be on the conference app. You can reach out to us. We also have the contact information of the other caucuses. Right now, we're sitting at about 11, if I'm not mistaken, different affinity groups, identities. We understand that there are intersectional identities and you can be part of all of them. You could be part of one of them. You could be part of none. What's up to you on whether that's part of your wheelhouse or not. The caucus leaders do get invited to the planning over the summer. After the NCORE is over, we start the planning for the following year. So we do ask our groups for session ideas, invited session presentation ideas. We do get together in the summer to plan all of that out and provide those suggestions to the NCORE team. Another way to get involved is the National Advisory Council. You gotta love volunteer work when it comes to working in higher education. But the National Advisory Council really is a space where you can get involved with NCORE on a national level and really be part of the decisions and have a seat at the table. So we would encourage you all. National Advisory Council applications are currently closed, and those who already applied should be finding out by mid-December, that if I'm not mistaken. So for next year, I would be on the lookout like end of June, early July, right, Justin? Something like that.
Yes.
Yep. And then lastly, myself, Eva, Raul, and Deer, who couldn't make the call today but helped put the session together, serves as the co-chair for the NCORE caucus as well. We'll all be getting together on the 14th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time to provide office hours. These office hours will be to answer any additional questions. If you need thought partners on your proposals, if you are just confused or you need some help with some language, or you're like, am I going off the wall thinking I can do this? Like, what, I just need some support. We are here for you. We will give you the air hug that you need and the extra encouragement to submit the proposal because you matter. Your proposal matters. Air high five, air hug if you are a person that enjoys physical touch and that is your love language. If not, words of affirmation, we will make it happen. This is our act of service to you all. And I'm missing 2 of the, and that is also our quality time. And that leaves out 1 love language. And I don't know I can't remember what it is, but we are trying to hit all 5 love languages. These are the 2 ways that you can join our caucuses. Just if your phone has a QR code scanner, just scan those. We have a group me and they have a Facebook group. And that's it, folks. I know we are over 4 minutes, but thank you all for joining us and for being on the call. Please, please, please reach out to us if you have any questions. We greatly appreciate your time today. Enjoy. Thanks for being here.